Hey there, friends from all over the world. Welcome to our channel. If it's your first time here, we'd be honored to have you join us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So it's 1898. You're part of an excavation in Saqqara, just outside of Cairo, a place packed with ancient tombs and pyramids. You're in full Indiana Jones mode, hoping to find something epic: golden scrolls, treasure maps, or maybe even the mummy of a famous pharaoh. Instead, you find a wooden bird. At first, you're disappointed. It looks like just an old toy. But little do you know, years later, someone will suggest that this toy might actually be an ancient model of a monoplane. That artifact, now known as the Saqqara Bird, is made from sycamore wood. Its wingspan is just 7 inches and it weighs about 40 grams, basically the perfect souvenir from Egypt. It's believed to be over 2,000 years old and surprisingly simple in design, with no feather carvings or detailed decorations. It has a beak and 2 eyes, giving it a hawk-like appearance, symbolic of the god Horus. But its tail is weird. It's square and stands upright like it's missing a piece. Naturally, people love a good mystery, so over the years many theories popped up to explain what this bird was for. Theory number 1, it was a ceremonial object. Theory number 2, a toy for a rich kid. Theory number 3, some kind of boomerang, which was actually a popular idea in ancient Egypt. Theory number 4, a weather vane or ritual tool, but that was ruled out because the object had no holes or signs of being mounted, apart from a modern one added by the Cairo Museum to display it on a stick. Nearly a century after it was discovered, Egyptologist Dr. Khalil Masiha came up with a bold idea. What if it was an ancient model of a monoplane? He believed that if the bird had a horizontal tail stabilizer, and if the wings were positioned just right, it could actually generate aerodynamic lift, just like modern aircraft. He also pointed out that it was common in ancient Egypt to place miniature models of inventions in tombs. So, did the ancient Egyptians invent flight around 200 BC? That would seriously upset the Wright brothers, who didn't fly until 1903. Only one way to find out: test it. But of course, the Cairo Museum wasn't about to let anyone throw one of their prized artifacts into the sky, so glider designer Martin Gregory built a replica from balsa wood. His conclusion? Even with a missing tail, the bird wasn't exactly airworthy. Still, the mystery lingered. The History Channel wasn't convinced either, so they had an aerodynamics expert create another version, testing it in conditions similar to ancient Egypt. This time the results were impressive. The model flew quite well, so maybe, just maybe, this little bird was a prototype for flight way ahead of its time. A real out-of-place artifact, and it's not the only one. In 1901, divers off the coast of Antikythera, Greece, found a strange bronze device inside a shipwreck. Today it's known as the Antikythera mechanism, and it's believed to be the world's first analog computer, dating back to around 100 BC. This incredible machine could track the positions of the sun, moon, planets, and stars. It could predict eclipses and even calculate how fast the moon moved across the sky. To this day, no one knows exactly who made it, how, or why, but it's way too advanced for its time. Let's talk plumbing. You might think the first toilets appeared in the 20th century. Just kidding. The Minoans on the island of Crete and the Indus Valley civilization had toilets over 4,000 years ago. Their plumbing was so advanced it wasn't improved upon for centuries. The Minoan toilet in Knossos had a wooden seat above a tunnel, with water flushed from a rooftop tank into a drainage system. Only the super-rich had this luxury. Back then, if a house had a flushing toilet, you knew it was located in the fancy part of town. Automatic doors? Sure, we got them in 1931, but guess what? Heron of Alexandria, a first-century mathematician and engineer, built a temple door that could open on its own using hydraulics. Here's how it worked. You'd light a fire, which heated water in a hidden copper pot. As the water turned to steam, it transferred into containers that acted like weights. These would drop and pull open the doors using ropes. It wasn't exactly a supermarket door. It took hours to open. That's why they only opened them once a day before religious ceremonies, for dramatic effect. So, in 1938, a German archaeologist discovered this weird clay jar near Baghdad. It was shaped kind of like an oval and dated to around 2,000 years ago. This was the so-called Baghdad battery. If you fill it with vinegar or some other weak acid, and boom, it generates about 1 volt of electricity. Some people think it was used for electroplating precious metals, while others believe it might have held sacred scrolls. The truth? Well, it's still a mystery. How about contact lenses? Leonardo da Vinci actually came up with the idea way back in 1508. He designed a glass lens with a funnel meant to be worn filled with water to help improve vision. Super uncomfortable, honestly. About 100 years later, French scientist René Descartes improved on the concept, suggesting the cornea be covered with a liquid-filled tube. You couldn't blink with it, though. Fast forward 2 centuries, and better glass-making technology allowed for lenses that fit the eye and let you blink. But they were heavy and kind of suffocating. Then, in 1948, a British optician accidentally sanded down a plastic lens and realized it stayed in place just by covering the cornea. And that's how the modern contact lens was born. Imagine sending a message from London to New York in the 1800s. It would have taken about 10 days by boat, but in 1858, the first transatlantic telegram cable changed everything. Queen Victoria herself sent the first message. Unfortunately, the cable broke just weeks later. It took years to fix. Ancient Indian texts mention flying palaces called vimanas which could take off, soar through space, and even disappear. While many people think they're just mythology, others believe they were based on lost technology. According to the Vedas, there were vimanas powered by different engines, built for everything from local travel to lunar missions. Some could even turn invisible or travel at extreme speeds. These texts also included technical manuals, details on navigation, pilot training, materials, flight paths, and even food for long journeys. Some folks think it's just too detailed to be pure legend. Maybe they really existed. Speaking of Indian genius, around 600 BC, a doctor named Sushruta wrote the first known manual on medicine and surgery. He described hundreds of medicinal plants and complex surgeries, including skin grafts and nose reconstruction using forehead skin, a technique still used today. Oh, and thank India for giving us the number 0. Before the 5th century AD, people just used blanks to represent nothing. But 0 made math easier. No binary systems, no computers without it. The oldest 0 ever found is carved into a temple wall in Gwalior, India. The Indus Valley civilization used precise rulers made from ivory way back in 1500 BC. They had measurement units accurate to 1/500th of an inch. These tools were essential for architecture and trade. They also created standardized weights over 4,000 years ago, used to measure everything from grain to luxury goods. Their metric system made its way to Persia and Central Asia, forming the basis of today's standard weights. Love yoga? Thank ancient India again. It dates back over 5,000 years and was first mentioned in the Vedas. Over centuries, it evolved into a full-body discipline with over 200 sacred texts. The Yoga Sutras, written at the beginning of the Common Era, turned it into a science of longevity and enlightenment. It only reached the West in the 1800s, and now it's everywhere. Ever play chess? It started in India too. The early version was called Chaturanga, played by 4 people using 64 squares and rectangular dice. Teams were based on seating position, and players had pawns, kings, bishops, and knights. Even the idea of chess as a game of strategy comes from this early Indian version. Even shampoo is Indian in origin. The word comes from the Hindi term meaning to massage. It was invented in 1762 using oils and herbs. British traders loved it, brought it back home, and the idea evolved into the shampoo we use today. While the ancient Greeks wore animal skins, ancient Indians were already cultivating cotton as early as the 5th century BC. Cotton threads became popular across the Mediterranean. Cashmere wool, one of the finest fabrics in the world, comes from Kashmir, India. Oh, and buttons? Yep, also from India. Around 5,000 years ago, they carved seashells into decorative shapes with tiny holes. At first, they were ornaments, but then people started using them to fasten clothes. And finally, while Marconi is often credited with inventing radio, it was actually Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose who first revealed the science behind wireless communication in 1895. So what do all these inventions have in common? They were all way ahead of their time and remind us just how advanced ancient civilizations really were. Sometimes history isn't just about what we've learned, it's about what we've forgotten. He sent an electromagnetic wave across 75 feet inside Calcutta's town hall. It passed through walls, rang a bell, and even ignited some gunpowder. Marconi later took a page from Bose's book, using his invention, the Mercury coherer, as a model for his two-way radio system. But here's the kicker. Bose never patented his brilliant invention, so he didn't get the credit until nearly a century later. Now check this out, Neanderthal fiber tech. No, I'm not joking. It's real. In 2020, a group of scientists published a study that totally reshaped how we view our ancient cousins. A discovery in France changed archaeology forever. And it wasn't the first time something like this happened, but let's rewind a bit. For the longest time, Neanderthals were seen as your typical cavemen. If you're picturing Fred Flintstone right now, you're not far off. So where did this stereotype even come from? Back in the 19th century, British geologist William King coined the term Neanderthal after analysing some ancient bones. He declared they were a dull, unintelligent species, and that stuck for generations, but a tiny, quarter-inch piece of string flipped that narrative on its head. In a dry river valley called Abri du Maras, archaeologists found a piece of twisted fibre next to a stone tool. It could have been used to make clothing, fishing nets, anything really. In prehistoric times, that was high-tech stuff, and Neanderthals had mastered it. Scientists already knew they made tar from birch bark and beads from seashells. There's also evidence of Neanderthal art. So, clearly they weren't dumb brutes. This bit of string and other discoveries like it are changing how we see our ancestors. Speaking of rewriting history, let's talk about the pyramids. Turns out they weren't built by massive armies of exhausted workers whipped into submission by pharaohs. That whole myth started with Herodotus, the famous Greek historian. Back in 500 BC, he claimed 100,000 men built the Great Pyramid of Giza, but didn't say who they were or why they were doing it. And so the legend was born, huge stone blocks dragged by men under the watchful eye of a cruel overseer. But Egyptologists, scientists who study ancient Egyptian culture, disagree. They recently uncovered a worker village that tells a very different story. Yes, the workers' bones showed signs of physical labor. But even today, construction is tough. Just look at the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. It took 12,000 people nearly 6 years to finish it. The Great Pyramid took 3 times as many workers and about 2 decades to complete. That's still incredibly impressive for ancient engineering. And here's the thing, these workers were well taken care of. They had high-protein diets, medical care, and good wages. In fact, they lived better than most non-workers and had their families nearby. How do we know all this? Archaeologists found bakeries, dormitories, bread jars, and all kinds of everyday items. Turns out the pharaohs were decent bosses after all. Now about the hieroglyphs, you know, those ancient picture-like symbols. For over 1,000 years, no one could read them. They weren't used anymore, and it's not like there was an ancient Egyptian to English dictionary, but that all changed in 1822. A couple decades earlier, the French had discovered a broken slab of black granite. It had the same inscription written in 3 scripts, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Demotic, a simplified Egyptian script, and ancient Greek. It dated back to 196 BC and contained a religious decree. French linguist Jean-François Champollion cracked the code. Since people still understood ancient Greek, he matched the Greek letters to the Egyptian ones. And boom, we could finally read hieroglyphs again. That slab became known as the Rosetta Stone, and its importance went way beyond archaeology. Today, Rosetta Stone is a term used for anything that helps solve a deep mystery. Basically, what Champollion did was decode the ancient text using a kind of letter-for-symbol substitution similar to a modern-day cipher. Speaking of ciphers, did you know the oldest deciphered language in Europe is something called Linear B? Okay, it doesn't sound cool, but bear with me. Linear B is an ancient Greek script used centuries before the alphabet we know today, and it descended from an even older script, Linear A. People on the island of Crete used Linear B more than 1,000 years ago during the late Bronze Age. Eventually, the Mycenaean civilization that used it disappeared, and so did knowledge of the script. No one even knew it existed until the early 20th century. That's when British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans began excavating a massive palace complex in Knossos, Crete. This was the heart of the Minoan culture, and it had everything: 1,300 rooms, colourful paintings of dolphins, griffins and bulls. It captured Evans's imagination. But the most valuable find? Thousands of baked clay tablets that had survived thanks to a fire that destroyed the palace. The problem? They were written in an unknown language. No one could read them. It took 50 more years until Michael Ventris, an English architect and code breaker, cracked the mystery. He had studied Greek and Latin, and after attending a lecture about the tablets, he became obsessed. In 1952, he finally solved it. Shockingly, the script turned out to be an ancient form of Greek, but Linear A, the earlier script, remains a mystery to this day. Maybe one day another passionate young researcher like Ventris will crack that code too. And speaking of unexpected heroes, let's talk about Basil Brown. He wasn't a professional archaeologist, but in 1939, he uncovered the richest early medieval burial in Europe. This happened in Sutton Hoo in southeast England. And no, it wasn't a stone tomb. It was a full-size ship, longer than 3 double-decker London buses. But it wasn't just the ship. It was loaded with treasures, golden clasps, fine tableware, embroidered textiles, and even silver from distant Byzantium, which is modern-day Istanbul. Imagine how much time and money it took to ship silver from Turkey to England in the 7th century. There was no England yet, just Anglo-Saxon tribes. The ship was likely the burial site of one of their kings. The acidic soil destroyed any human remains, if there were any to begin with. It might have been a symbolic monument built to honor someone important. No one knows for sure. But what they found at Sutton Hoo changed everything we thought we knew about the so-called Dark Ages. It revealed an advanced, wealthy Anglo-Saxon culture thriving after the Romans left Britain. And who knows, maybe England's soil still hides archaeology's next big breakthrough. Take Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, for example. This ancient site forced historians to rewrite the history books, literally. Over 11,000 years ago, prehistoric people built a mysterious masterpiece, older than Stonehenge. Before this discovery, experts believed ancient humans didn't know metalwork, couldn't make pottery, and only started settling down once farming began. But Göbekli Tepe flipped that theory upside down. It showed that temples, not farms, were the first reason people chose to settle in one place. Meet Professor Klaus Schmidt, the man whose findings changed everything. He proved that hunter-gatherer communities laid the foundation for what we now call civilization. Back in the 1960s, archaeologists had visited the site, but totally missed its significance. They found limestone slabs scattered across a hill and assumed it was nothing. Little did they know they were standing on top of one of humanity's greatest hidden chapters. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave us a comment, and stay tuned for more.